The morning sun peeked through the kitchen blinds as Lisa stirred honey into her tea. The spacious kitchen gleamed with high-end appliances that her husband Tom had insisted on installing during their last home renovation, but Lisa still preferred her old chipped mug from college over the expensive china sets gathering dust in the cabinets. "Another business trip?" she asked, watching her husband rush around in his tailored suit, phone pressed to his ear. Tom nodded, dropping a quick kiss on her forehead. "Board meeting in Singapore, back on Thursday." He glanced at his watch. A birthday gift from Lisa that cost 2 months of her old teaching salary before they had met. "The car's waiting outside." Lisa smiled and waved as he hurried out. 15 years of marriage to one of the country's richest men hadn't changed her much. While her friends from college had expected her to transform into some glamorous socialite after marrying the owner of SkyPath Airlines, Lisa still clipped coupons, drove her 10-year-old car, and volunteered at the local animal shelter every Tuesday. After finishing her tea, Lisa wandered into their home office and opened her laptop. Her sister Jen's birthday was coming up next weekend in Chicago, and Lisa had been planning to send a gift package. But as she stared at the delivery options online, a different idea formed. Why not go in person? She murmured to herself, clicking away from the gift website to the SkyPath Airlines booking page. Tom was always inviting her to use the company jet, but Lisa had always refused, finding the idea too extravagant. Jen would be so surprised. Lisa twirled a strand of her brown hair, a habit from childhood that emerged when she was deep in thought. She remembered Tom mentioning how he valued customer feedback, always wondering if his airline was truly delivering the experience he envisioned. Just last week at dinner, he'd said, "I wish I could experience it like a regular passenger, you know. See what it's really like without everyone recognizing me." That's when Lisa had her idea. She wouldn't book the flight as Lisa Palmer, wife of SkyPath Airlines CEO Thomas Palmer. She would use her maiden name, Lisa Chen. She would fly economy class, carry a normal amount of luggage, and experience everything just as any other passenger would. The thought made her feel slightly mischievous, like a child planning a harmless prank. She giggled as she filled out the booking form, selecting a middle seat in economy class for flight 347 departing tomorrow morning. No priority boarding, no special meal, nothing that would set her apart from any other passenger. After completing the booking, Lisa felt a rush of excitement she hadn't experienced in years. Tom's world of business class lounges and private jets had always seemed so separate from her everyday life. Tomorrow, she would see his creation through different eyes. The next morning, Lisa dressed in her most ordinary clothes, jeans, a simple blue sweater, and comfortable walking shoes. She pulled her hair into a casual ponytail and wore minimal makeup. Looking in the mirror, she saw not the wife of a billionaire, but the small-town girl from Ohio who had once taught 3rd grade and lived in a tiny apartment with 2 roommates. She packed light, just a small carry-on suitcase with enough clothes for the weekend. No designer labels, no expensive jewelry, just the basics, plus Jen's birthday gift, a handmade photo album Lisa had spent weeks creating. As she called a regular taxi instead of using their private driver, Lisa felt a strange sense of freedom. Nobody would know who she was. Nobody would treat her differently because of who she had married. For the next few hours, she would just be Lisa Chen, an ordinary woman taking a flight to visit her sister. Little did she know that this simple decision would set in motion a chain of events that would shake SkyPath Airlines to its core. The morning of the flight, Lisa arrived at the bustling airport 2 hours early. She stood in line at the economy check-in counter, something she hadn't done in years. Usually, Tom's assistant handled all their travel arrangements, and they entered through the VIP entrance, where staff rolled out the red carpet treatment. Today was different. Today, she was just Lisa Chen, an ordinary passenger on Flight 347 to Chicago. The terminal buzzed with activity. Families wrestling with oversized luggage, business travelers typing furiously on laptops, airport staff directing the flow of travelers. Lisa breathed it all in, finding an odd comfort in being just another face in the crowd. When her turn came at the check-in counter, the agent barely looked up from her computer. "Boarding pass and ID, please," the woman said, her fingers clicking rapidly on the keyboard. Lisa handed over her driver's license, the old one with her maiden name that she'd kept just in case, and waited as the agent processed her information. "Window or aisle preference?" the agent asked, still not making eye contact. "I'd already selected a middle seat when I booked," Lisa replied. This finally made the agent look up, her expression one of mild confusion. Most passengers try to avoid middle seats like the plague. "Are you sure? We have some aisle seats available." Lisa smiled. "I'm sure. The middle seat is perfect." The agent shrugged and handed over the boarding pass. Gate 34B boarding begins in 90 minutes. With her carry-on rolling behind her, Lisa made her way through security. No priority lane today. She removed her shoes, placed her small bag of toiletries in the plastic bin, and waited patiently as the line inched forward. The man behind her sighed loudly, checking his watch every few seconds. A young mother in front struggled to fold her stroller while holding a fussing baby. Without thinking, Lisa stepped forward. "Can I help you with that?" The woman looked up with grateful eyes. "Would you? That would be amazing." Lisa held the baby, a chubby-cheeked little boy with curious eyes, while his mother collapsed the stroller and placed it on the conveyor belt. The baby gurgled happily in Lisa's arms, grabbing at her ponytail. "You're a natural," the mother said as she took back her child. "Do you have kids?" A familiar pang shot through Lisa's chest. "No," she said softly, "not yet." After clearing security, Lisa wandered through the terminal, taking in the sights and sounds that most frequent flyers tuned out. She passed by the first-class lounge, a place she normally would have entered without a second thought. Through the glass doors, she could see comfortable chairs, complimentary buffets, and travelers enjoying pre-flight champagne. Instead, she found a coffee shop near her gate and ordered a simple black coffee. The barista called out Lisa when her drink was ready, just her first name, not Mrs. Palmer or Tom Palmer's wife. The anonymity felt refreshing. Lisa found a seat near the window overlooking the tarmac. A Skypath Airlines plane was being prepared for departure, ground crew swarming around it like busy ants. Somewhere in the company's headquarters, Tom would be in meetings, completely unaware that his wife was about to experience his airline as a regular customer. She sipped her coffee and opened the paperback novel she brought along, another luxury she rarely had time for these days. Between charity galas, board member dinner parties, and supporting Tom's busy schedule, quiet moments like this were rare. As boarding time approached, Lisa joined the growing crowd around Gate 34B. She watched as first-class passengers were called to board, followed by premium economy and those needing extra assistance. The gate agent's voice came over the speaker, calling for Zone 1 passengers. Lisa checked her boarding pass, Zone 4. By the time her zone was called, the line snaked through the waiting area. Lisa took her place, clutching her boarding pass and ID. As the line moved forward, she caught sight of her reflection in a window. No designer clothes, no makeup team, no personal assistant hovering nearby. Just a woman in jeans and a sweater waiting to board a plane. And for the first time in years, she felt completely herself. Lisa handed her boarding pass to the gate agent and walked down the jetway, joining the slow-moving line of passengers boarding the aircraft. The familiar Skypath Airlines logo decorated the plane's tail, a stylized blue and silver bird in flight that Tom had personally chosen during a rebranding 5 years ago. "Welcome aboard," a flight attendant greeted without looking up from checking boarding passes. Lisa made her way down the narrow aisle, squeezing past passengers struggling to fit carry-ons into the overhead bins. Her seat, 23B, was located halfway down the aircraft between an elderly gentleman already settled by the window and an empty aisle seat. "Good morning," Lisa smiled at the man as she sat down. He nodded politely, then returned to his crossword puzzle. Lisa buckled her seatbelt and watched the final passengers board, observing the flight attendant's interactions with each one. Tom was always talking about customer touchpoints and service excellence at dinner parties. Now she was experiencing those concepts firsthand. The plane filled quickly. A harried-looking woman with tousled hair and a wrinkled business suit claimed the aisle seat beside Lisa, immediately pulling out her laptop. "I'm so sorry," the woman said breathlessly, "but do you mind if I start working? I have a presentation in Chicago this afternoon that I'm nowhere near ready for." "Not at all," Lisa replied warmly. "I hope it goes well." The woman flashed a grateful smile before immersing herself in her slides. As the last passengers settled in, the head flight attendant made announcements over the intercom. Lisa noticed small details she'd never paid attention to before: the slightly worn seat fabric, the coffee stain on the safety instruction card, the overhead reading light that flickered when turned on. The plane pushed back from the gate right on schedule. Tom would be pleased about that, at least. Punctuality was one of his biggest priorities for Skypath. 20 minutes into the flight, the pilot announced they were expecting some turbulence and turned on the seatbelt sign. Dark clouds had gathered outside Lisa's row, and rain spattered against the small window. The plane began to bounce and shake, causing nervous murmurs throughout the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen," a flight attendant announced, "due to the turbulence, we'll be delaying our beverage service. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened." The elderly man beside Lisa gripped the armrests tightly, his knuckles turning white. Lisa noticed his breathing becoming rapid and shallow. "First time flying?" she asked gently. The man shook his head. "No, but I never got used to the bumpy parts. My wife used to hold my hand during turbulence, but she passed 2 years ago. First time flying without her." Lisa's heart tightened. Without hesitation, she offered her hand. "I'd be happy to stand in if it helps." Gratitude flooded the man's weathered face as he took her hand in his trembling one. "I'm Pete," he said, "heading to Chicago to meet my first great-grandchild." "Lisa," she replied, "going to surprise my sister for her birthday." As the plane continued to bounce through the storm clouds, Lisa and Pete chatted about his 4 grandchildren and new great-grandson. The woman on the aisle eventually closed her laptop and joined their conversation, introducing herself as Diane. By the time the turbulence subsided, the 3 strangers were exchanging life stories like old friends. When the beverage service finally began, a flight attendant named Kelly reached their row. Her name tag was slightly crooked, and she looked exhausted as she recited, "What would you like to drink?" "Just water, please," Lisa requested. Kelly handed her a plastic cup with barely a glance, then moved on to the next row. "Not exactly 5-star service," Diane whispered with a small laugh. Lisa nodded, remembering Tom's passionate speeches about customer care. There was definitely room for improvement. As the drink cart continued down the aisle, a commotion erupted several rows ahead. A passenger's voice rose above the ambient noise, clearly unhappy about something. The flight attendants huddled together, whispering urgently. One picked up the cabin phone. "Ladies and gentlemen," the captain's voice crackled over the intercom moments later. "We apologize for the inconvenience, but we've been informed by our ground team that there's been an overbooking situation with our connecting flights in Chicago. Some passengers may need to be rerouted. Our team will be coming through the cabin shortly to speak with affected travelers." Lisa frowned. Overbooking was a common industry practice she knew Tom disliked, but hadn't been able to fully eliminate. She watched as Kelly approached their row with a tablet in hand and a worried expression on her face. "Miss Chen." Kelly looked directly at Lisa for the first time. "I'm afraid we have a situation with your connecting flight." "What do you mean there's a situation with my connecting flight?" Lisa asked, confused. "I don't have a connecting flight. I'm going directly to Chicago." Kelly frowned and double-checked her tablet. "According to our system, you're booked to Dallas after Chicago." "There must be some mistake," Lisa said. "I'm staying in Chicago." Kelly's professional smile tightened. "Ma'am, the system shows you continuing to Dallas. Regardless, we have an issue with the Chicago flight. It's overbooked, and we need some passengers to take a later flight." Lisa felt a twinge of frustration but kept her voice calm. "I specifically booked a direct flight to Chicago with no connection, and I need to be there today for my sister's birthday." By now, Diane and Pete were watching the exchange with interest, along with several passengers in nearby rows. "I understand your frustration," Kelly said, though her tone suggested otherwise. "But we're asking for volunteers to take the 7 p.m. flight instead. We're offering a $200 flight voucher as compensation." Lisa shook her head. "I'm sorry, but that won't work for me. The birthday dinner is at 6. Kelly's smile disappeared completely. "Well, if we don't get enough volunteers, we'll have to select passengers to rebook. Your ticket fare class might put you in that category." Pete leaned forward. "Young lady, this woman was kind to me during the turbulence. Surely you can find someone else to bump." Kelly ignored him, her eyes fixed on her tablet. Ms. Chen, I'm going to have to ask you to collect your belongings when we land. A gate agent will help rebook you. This isn't right, Lisa protested, feeling heat rise to her cheeks. I booked this flight weeks ago. I confirmed it yesterday. There's nothing in the terms about being removed from flights that aren't even connecting flights. A tall man in a Skypath Airlines uniform appeared at Kelly's side. His name tag read Robert Flight Manager. Is there a problem here? He asked, his voice carrying an edge of impatience. Kelly explained the situation in hushed tones. Robert nodded and turned to Lisa. Ms. Chen, I understand you're upset, but overbooking happens with every airline. Someone has to take the later flight, and our algorithm has selected you based on your ticket class and check-in time. That's not fair, Diane chimed in. She was at the gate well before boarding started. I saw her. Robert shot Diane an annoyed glance. Ma'am, please don't involve yourself in matters that don't concern you. Lisa took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. May I ask why I was selected? I booked weeks ago and arrived early. Our system priorities certain passengers, Robert replied vaguely. Perhaps next time you should consider joining our loyalty program or purchasing a higher fare class. The condescension in his voice was unmistakable. Lisa noticed several passengers had pulled out their phones, recording the interaction. Under normal circumstances, she would have been mortified to be the center of such attention, but something inside her had shifted. This wasn't about her anymore. It was about how any customer might be treated. I'd like to speak to someone from customer relations, Lisa said firmly. Robert laughed lightly. We don't have customer relations staff on flights. You can file a complaint online, but I assure you, the airline is within its rights to manage overbooking situations. What would Tom Palmer say about that policy? Lisa asked before she could stop herself. Robert's eyebrows shot up. Excuse me. Tom Palmer, the CEO, would he approve of loyal customers being treated this way? Robert's face darkened. Look, lady, throwing around the boss's name won't help you. Do you think Tom Palmer cares about one economy passenger? He's probably on his private jet right now, not giving a second thought to people like you. A woman across the aisle gasped and whispered to her seatmate, Is she recording this? This is going viral for sure. Robert continued, seemingly encouraged by having an audience. If you were Mrs. Palmer herself, maybe we'd care, but you're not. You're just trying to name-drop your way into keeping your seat. Lisa felt a strange calm settle over her. Actually, she said quietly, I am Mrs. Palmer. Robert rolled his eyes dramatically. Right, and I'm the King of England. Mrs. Palmer flies private, not economy, and her name isn't Chen. Chen is my maiden name, Lisa explained, reaching into her purse. She pulled out her wallet and removed her regular driver's license, the one with her married name. Lisa Palmer. Tom is my husband. Robert's face drained of color as he stared at the ID, then back at Lisa's face. Recognition slowly dawned in his eyes. He had seen her photo in the company newsletter, in the background at company events. The simple woman in economy class whom he had just insulted was indeed the CEO's wife. We didn't, he stammered, looking to Kelly for help. She too had gone pale, suddenly remembering where she had seen Lisa's face before, on the company website, cutting a ribbon at the opening of the new terminal wing. A passenger in the row behind them let out a low whistle. Oh man, you two are so fired. By now, at least a dozen phones were recording, and whispers rippled through the cabin like wildfire. The simple woman in seat 23B had just turned the entire flight upside down. A heavy silence fell over the cabin. Robert stood frozen, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Kelly clutched her tablet to her chest as if it might shield her from what was happening. The other passengers watched with wide eyes, phones still recording every second of the unfolding drama. Lisa felt strangely calm. She slipped her ID back into her wallet and looked up at Robert, whose face had turned from pale white to a deep, embarrassed red. Mrs. Palmer, we had no idea, he finally managed to stammer. Please accept my deepest apologies for the misunderstanding. It's not a misunderstanding, Lisa replied, her voice steady but loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. You made a mistake with my booking, claimed I had a connecting flight when I don't, and then tried to bump me from a flight I booked weeks ago. Robert's professional demeanor crumbled completely. "We can fix this immediately. Let me upgrade you to first class right away." He snapped his fingers at Kelly. "Move Mrs. Palmer to first class. Now." Kelly nodded frantically and began tapping on her tablet. "That's not necessary," Lisa said. "I'm perfectly comfortable here with my new friends." She smiled at Pete and Diane, who looked stunned but pleased. "But Mrs. Palmer," Robert insisted, "we must make this right." "You know what would make this right?" Lisa asked. "Treating every passenger with the respect they deserve, not just the CEO's wife when you realize who she is." A few passengers murmured in agreement. Someone toward the front of the plane started clapping slowly, and soon others joined in. Robert looked around nervously, suddenly aware that this incident was being witnessed and recorded by a plane full of customers. "Of course, Mrs. Palmer, you're absolutely right." The pilot's voice came over the intercom. "Flight attendants, please prepare for landing." "We'll discuss this further when we land," Robert said quickly before retreating toward the front of the plane. Kelly lingered awkwardly for a moment before following him. As they disappeared, Diane let out a low whistle. "That was the most amazing thing I've ever seen on a flight, and I'm a consultant who flies twice a week." Pete patted Lisa's hand. "Good for you, standing up like that. Not just for yourself, but for all of us regular folks." Lisa felt a mix of emotions: embarrassment at being the center of attention, satisfaction at standing up to the unfair treatment, and worry about what Tom would think when he inevitably heard about this. The videos were surely making their way to social media already. As the plane began its descent into Chicago, flight attendants moved through the cabin for a final check, their eyes carefully avoiding seat 23B. When Kelly passed by, she couldn't help glancing at Lisa with a look of pure terror. Lisa caught her eye and said quietly, "I'm not trying to get anyone fired. I just want things to improve." Kelly nodded quickly before moving on, but Lisa could see the woman's hands trembling. The plane touched down smoothly, and the captain's voice came over the speaker again. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Chicago O'Hare International Airport. Local time is 2:15 p.m., and the temperature is 72 degrees. On behalf of SkyPath Airlines and our entire crew, we'd like to thank you for flying with us today." As the plane taxied to the gate, Lisa noticed a flurry of activity through the small window. Several people in SkyPath uniforms were gathered at the gate, looking anxious. "Looks like the welcome committee has arrived," Diane remarked, peering past Lisa. When the seatbelt sign finally turned off, no one moved. Typically, passengers would rush to stand and grab their bags from the overhead bins, but today, everyone seemed to be waiting to see what would happen next. The main cabin door opened, and instead of the usual gate agent, a tall woman in an impeccable suit stepped aboard. Lisa recognized her immediately as Patricia, Tom's executive assistant. "Ladies and gentlemen," the captain announced, "we ask that you remain seated for a brief moment. Thank you for your cooperation." Patricia scanned the cabin until her eyes landed on Lisa. The recognition in her face was immediate, followed by visible relief. She hurried down the aisle, followed by two customer service managers Lisa had met at company functions. "Lisa," Patricia whispered when she reached row 23. "Tom's on the phone. He's seen the videos." In that moment, Lisa realized that her simple decision to book a regular flight had already set in motion changes that would reach far beyond this one plane and this one day. "Tom's seen the videos," Lisa whispered, suddenly feeling like all the air had been sucked from the cabin. A mixture of emotions washed over her: embarrassment, worry, and a touch of guilt for causing what was clearly becoming a company crisis. Patricia nodded, handing Lisa a cell phone. "He wants to speak with you. Right now." Lisa took a deep breath and accepted the phone. "Hi, honey," she said, trying to sound casual. "Lisa." Tom's voice was a mixture of confusion and concern. "What's happening?" "The internet is exploding with videos of you on one of our flights. Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Lisa assured him, aware that passengers were still watching her with curious eyes. "I just wanted to surprise Jen for her birthday and thought I'd take a regular flight like any other customer." There was a pause on the other end. "And they tried to bump you because of overbooking. And Robert said those things to you?" The disbelief in Tom's voice was palpable. "Yes," Lisa confirmed, "but I'm okay, really." "This is unacceptable," Tom said, his voice rising. Absolutely unacceptable. I'm going to fire. No, Lisa cut in firmly. Don't fire anyone. At least not yet. We need to talk about this in person. Pete and Diane exchanged glances, clearly impressed by Lisa's calm authority. Tom sighed heavily. You're right. As usual. Look, Patricia will escort you off the plane and get you to a quiet place. The press is already gathering at the terminal. Some of the videos have over 50,000 views already, and it's only been 20 minutes. Lisa glanced around the cabin, where most passengers were still seated, obviously reluctant to leave before seeing how this drama concluded. What about the other passengers? They shouldn't be delayed because of me. You're right, Tom agreed. Put Patricia back on. Lisa handed the phone to Patricia, who listened intently for a moment before nodding and ending the call. Mrs. Palmer, Patricia addressed Lisa formally, aware of their audience. Mr. Palmer suggests we allow all passengers to deplane normally. He's arranged for customer service representatives to meet everyone at the gate with vouchers for their next Skypath flight as an apology for any inconvenience today. A murmur of appreciation rippled through the cabin. That sounds perfect, Lisa said with a smile. Patricia turned to address the full cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Skypath Airlines and our CEO Tom Palmer, we want to apologize for any unprofessional service you may have witnessed today. As a token of our appreciation for your patience, customer service representatives will be at the gate with vouchers for everyone. Thank you for flying with us. This announcement was met with scattered applause. The tension that had filled the cabin began to dissolve as passengers stood and retrieved their belongings. Diane stretched her arms above her head. Best flight drama ever, and I got a voucher out of it. This story will kill at dinner parties for years. Pete chuckled as he carefully stood up, his aged joints cracking audibly. In my 82 years, I've never seen anything like it. He turned to Lisa. Thank you for holding my hand earlier, and for standing up for decent treatment. My late wife would have liked you very much. Lisa felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. It was my pleasure, Pete. I hope your great-grandson is everything you're hoping for. You'll have to let us know how this all turns out, Diane said, handing Lisa a business card. I'm truly invested in the story now. As passengers began filing off the plane, many nodded or smiled at Lisa. A few gave her thumbs-up signs or whispered quick thank yous as they passed. She realized that her small act of booking a regular flight had somehow made her a temporary champion for everyday travelers. When the cabin had mostly emptied, Patricia gestured for Lisa to follow her. We have a car waiting to take you to the executive lounge. Tom's called an emergency meeting with the customer service directors. I still need to get to Jen's, Lisa reminded her. That was the whole point of this trip. Of course, Patricia nodded. We'll have you there by 5. But Tom would really appreciate your input on how to handle this situation first. As Lisa gathered her carry-on and prepared to leave, Robert and Kelly appeared in the aisle, both looking like they were facing a firing squad. Mrs. Palmer, Robert began, his voice strained. I want to personally apologize for my behavior earlier. It was completely unprofessional and not representative of Skypath's values. Kelly nodded vigorously beside him, her eyes wide with anxiety. Lisa studied them for a moment. Their careers were potentially hanging by a thread, and they knew it. But she also recognized genuine regret in their expressions. Today wasn't about me, Lisa said carefully. It was about how we treat people, all people, whether they're CEOs' wives or not. I think we all learned something important today. She paused, then added quietly, this can be a moment for positive change, not just punishment, don't you think? 3 months later, Lisa stood nervously in a large conference room at Skypath Airlines headquarters. The room was packed with employees, flight attendants, gate agents, customer service representatives, and managers from all levels of the company. Tom stood at her side, squeezing her hand reassuringly. You'll be great, he whispered. Just tell them your story like you told me. The room quieted as Tom stepped up to the microphone. Thank you all for being here today. As you know, 90 days ago, something happened on Flight 347 that changed our company forever. My wife Lisa experienced our airline as a regular customer, and what happened that day opened my eyes to issues I should have seen long ago. Tom gestured toward Lisa, and she took his place at the podium. Looking out at the sea of faces, she recognized 2 in particular, Robert and Kelly, sitting in the front row. Neither had been fired. Instead, at Lisa's suggestion, they had been tasked with helping develop a new customer service training program. "Hello, everyone," Lisa began, her voice soft but clear. "I'm not used to public speaking, so please bear with me. 3 months ago, I made a simple decision to book a flight to visit my sister. I wanted to experience what our passengers experience every day." Lisa shared the story from the beginning. Her check-in, her observations about the worn seats and stained safety cards, the turbulence that led to her connection with Pete, and finally, the confrontation over the overbooking. "What happened that day wasn't just about me being Tom's wife," she continued. "It was about how we treat people when we don't know who they are or what connections they might have. It was about seeing each passenger as a person with real needs, real feelings, and real lives that matter." The room was completely silent, every person hanging on her words. The videos of that incident went viral, as many of you know. Over 10 million views across different platforms. We received thousands of messages from people sharing similar experiences, not just on our airline but on others too. It sparked a conversation about customer service across the entire industry. Lisa took a sip of water before continuing. "Today, I'm proud to stand here as we launch our new Every Passenger Matters initiative. Over the past 3 months, Tom and I have worked with a team that includes Robert and Kelly. Yes, the same Robert and Kelly from Flight 347. There were a few surprised murmurs from those who hadn't known this detail. They could have been fired. Many people online demanded it, but firing them wouldn't solve the deeper issues. Instead, they've become our strongest advocates for change, sharing their perspective on how pressure, poor training, and outdated policies led to that moment on the plane." Robert nodded, his expression solemn but determined. "The changes we're announcing today aren't just cosmetic," Lisa continued. "We're revising our overbooking policies to be the most customer-friendly in the industry. We're investing $50 million in cabin upgrades. We're increasing staff training hours and changing how performance is measured, focusing on customer satisfaction rather than just on-time departures and profit margins." She looked around the room, making eye contact with as many people as possible. "But most importantly, we're changing our company culture. Starting today, every executive, including Tom and myself, will take regular flights in economy class at least once a quarter. No special treatment, no advance notice to the crew. We'll experience what our customers experience and use those insights to continuously improve." This announcement drew spontaneous applause. As part of this initiative, we're also proud to announce our new Customer Advocates program. 5 customers from Flight 347 have agreed to serve on our Customer Advisory Board, including Pete, who held my hand during turbulence, and Diane, who stood up for me during the confrontation. Lisa smiled as she thought of Pete, who had sent her photos of his great-grandson last month. One last announcement: I'm especially excited about our Second Chance Scholarship program. SkyPath will now provide training opportunities for people who need a fresh start in life. Our first recipient is already here today. She gestured toward a young woman in the second row. Amy was a single mother struggling to find work that could support her family. Now she's completed our flight attendant training program and starts her first official flight tomorrow. Amy stood briefly, beaming with pride as the room applauded. The incident on Flight 347 could have ended very differently, Lisa concluded. It could have been just another viral video that faded from memory after a few days of outrage. Instead, it became the catalyst for real change. A simple decision to book a flight led to a complete transformation of how this airline operates. She looked over at Tom, who was watching her with undisguised pride. "My husband has always said that SkyPath Airlines should make people feel valued from takeoff to landing. Now we're truly putting those words into action. Thank you all for being part of this journey." As the room erupted in applause, Lisa stepped back from the podium. What had begun as a simple personal decision, booking a flight to surprise her sister, had evolved into something much bigger than herself. One ordinary choice had created extraordinary change, proving that sometimes the most powerful person in the room isn't the one with the fancy title or the corner office, but the one with the courage to experience life from someone else's perspective. In a world where people often felt powerless against big corporations, Lisa's story had become a reminder that sometimes all it takes is one person in the right place at the right time to make a difference that touches countless lives.